Okay, so first thing you need to do to get a chest supported row absolutely spot on is to make sure that you get the height of the bench correct. Now, it depends which gym you're working in, so every bench is slightly different. But the basic rule of thumb is that you want to get to a position where the bench is high enough so that when you're lying on your front, like so, you're able to get a full stretch on your arms without the dumbbells touching the floor, okay? So the problem with being too low is that the dumbbells will bang against the thing before you're fully able to fully stretch out. More on that later. And if it's too high, what ends up happening is that you end up sort of up at this angle, kind of like up like this, and you're going to pull up into your neck and into your upper traps, which is what we're trying to not get to work so much. We're trying to work the middle traps, and that's not going to be effective either. So give it a bit of time, have a bit of a fiddle around. Usually for most people, it's the second increment up. Once you've got your bench set up, the next thing to do is to make sure that you've got yourself in a good starting position. So ideally, you want to be doing it on a floor which has got a sticky surface, unlike what we're working on here, but we'll go with it. And the key thing is that the bench is only part of what's holding you together. So you want to hands at the top of the bench like this, lower yourself down so that your chest is resting at the top of the bench and you've got a good bit of clearance at the top. What you don't want to be is kind of chin resting on the bench down here. So get yourself to the top of the bench where your chest is at the top. Feet should be pressed hard into the floor, bum squeezed, abs braced, and your whole body should feel really stiff and should be nicely aligned with the center of the bench. The stiffer that you are and the more that you can actually get yourself into that nice braced position, the better force you're going to be able to generate and the more you're going to be able to get your back to work. Now you're in place and you're braced. The next thing to think about is actually what we don't want you to be is really extended up like this. As hopefully you'll know by now, your shoulder blades work a little bit more effectively, or the muscles around them, when your back is actually slightly rounded around the top. And the key thing that I'm going to recommend that you do in order to encourage that is actually keep your chin down like this so that your upper back is rounded and your chin is slightly lower than you would normally hold it. To get yourself started, you want to pick the dumbbells up, make sure everything's braced. And in this position here, you'll know that you're doing the job correctly if you can feel a little bit of a stretch across your upper back. The way that we get that little bit of a stretch is by actually pushing the shoulder blades forward a little bit so that you're in this position here. You can see a nice rounded T-spine, which is the middle part of my back, as opposed to what we don't want to be doing is kind of starting with the shoulder blades pulled back and tightly together. If the shoulder blades are already pulled back and tightly together, that actually limits their ability to contribute to the pull. And so you're going to be using more from your elbows, i.e. your biceps, and less from the middle of the traps. Now we're in a good starting position. The first thing we want to do is we want to make sure we initiate by bending the elbows as opposed to what we don't want to be doing, which is pulling the shoulder blades back. Now that kind of contributes to what we just told you. We want to make sure the shoulder blades are involved in the movement. So pull the elbows back, keep the dumbbells nice and close to your midline. And the idea is we want to come up far enough so that the dumbbells touch the outside of the chest. And then you're going to come down again by focusing on pushing again with the elbows first, not the shoulder blades, until you come down to a nice full stretch. A really good cue for the lifting of the dumbbells is to think like you're trying to pull your elbows in tightly to your body, and if anything, slightly wrap them around your body and pull them in and back together, as opposed to what you're not trying to do is simply just lift your elbow as far back as it'll go. Keeping it tight to your body down here and actually focusing on keeping your elbows as close to each other as you possibly can is what's going to actually engage the lats, which will really get involved at the top of this rep, and make sure that you don't accidentally come up into your shoulders and into the sort of the base of your neck. One more thing we want to avoid is making sure that you don't move your spine as you pull. A lot of the time what you'll see is as people lift, they kind of lean back and come up like this, and then they come down and the chest comes down. The theory is with this one is that your spine should stay completely still. So a good rep will be up to the top here, squeeze, come down nice and slowly to a stretch without the spine doing anything at all. The last thing to talk about is how heavy you should go. So what I'll tend to program with this kind of exercise is higher reps. The reason for that is because it doesn't necessarily suit itself brilliantly to doing really heavy sort of low rep sets. As a result, what you will find is that you may get towards the end of the sort of, if you're doing 12 reps, for example, you may find that reps 8 to 12, you're not able to get all the way up to the top because the strength curve on this one's quite steep, i.e. you're much stronger here than you are here. So if you find that you're not able to get full contraction at the top every single time, that's okay. And I have to say, I think unless you're a complete beginner, that if you are not losing a little bit of range towards the end of the reps, they're probably not heavy enough. I will prescribe different tempos with this one. So sometimes we'll be getting you to get a bit of a hold at the top. Sometimes they'll be fast, sometimes they'll be slow. So just stick with whatever's programmed.